Well, good Friday morning, everyone. What you're looking at is the water subangle of the, oh, excuse me, of the elemental tablet of Earth. So that first thing I showed you was sort of a detailed view of this blue section here, the blue water subangle of the tablet of Earth, and which is the Enochian angel apartment building in the land of Earth. And there's sections of the apartment building. There's a fire section, which is the knight or the king section, fire, and the queen, water, and the prince, air, and the princess section, earth. And every apartment building is broken up into those same areas, and they've got a superintendent that turns on the heat or the water, collects the rent, and this is the water superintendent. And look at the top letters there, PH, and there's an A in the middle there, and an R and an A. Okay, and there's alternate letters. I think it's probably an X. Fra. Okay, now those letters, those four letters, PH and R and A, are broken in the middle by the top of a cross. Do you see that there's a cross there, a Calvary cross? They've got white tops and white bottoms. So that's called a Calvary cross. And there's two names in that cross, and those are called God names. One's the God name, and one's the name that controls the God name. And that's who the supervisor there, Fra, that's who Fra works with. It's sort of like the Fra is a superintendent of the building. Why I got off on this apartment. He's the superintendent. Fra's the superintendent. But the letters in the name of that Calvary cross are the names of the management company he works for. Okay, and the names that appear below the arms of the cross there are the four sets of workmen, and you can see by the color of their bottom little triangle there at the bottom of each one, starting at the bottom, that's an air. He does air stuff. He works on the air conditioning, and the next one is the earth one. Okay, now he works on the garden, and then there's the fire one. He turns the heat on, and then there's the water one that does the water. Now, the reason I'm showing you this, okay, the reason I'm showing you this morning, because I'm going to read a second section of the almost unreadable article that David Wilson wrote back in 1981 in our lodge newsletter. And it concerns our first initial weeks of our Thursday night in those days, Enochian Guild of Enochian Studies, which is just beginning novice mystics armed only with gems of the equinox and an Enochian dictionary, experimenting, opening up, studying, practicing as best we could by the seat of our pants Enochian magic. And yesterday I read the first part. The essay's called Senior in My Bedroom. David was quite an artist, but he was an even more talented scryer. He was the most talented scryer I've ever worked with. He was the only one for a while. And to tell you the truth, there's no one that I've encountered that's more impressive. Anyway, so we did the initial story yesterday. If you didn't see it, I won't go too much in recapping it, but it goes on today. Now, I also told you about the printing press in our garage that we used to print this thing. And we had to make metal plates and everything else. And over the years, this is 1981, so how many years? Okay, and it's starting to fade. So I'm going to just read the second section. The reason I showed you this is because the first section that, or the tablet that we used, was the Earth tablet, because it was the first one I would eventually complete in wood. And we thought we would start at Yod He Vav He order and start with Earth. And so that would be the elemental tablet of Earth. And the first operation we did was ladrum. Okay, elemental senior, Mars senior. I gotta. Now, the senior's name, ladrum, so the Mars senior of Earth, starts right here in the middle of the big cross, L-A-I-D-R-O-M. Ladrum. Today, as we'll soon find out, we are going to work with a lesser angel right here. We're going to work with the superintendent of the building of water, of earth. And that's right there. Fra. Now, there's a hierarchy that we're going to be using to, we invoke the boss of Fra, the god names of Fra. Let's see here, A-N-A-E-E-M and S-O-N-D-N, it looks like. And we're doing all of this with a dynamite scryer, fumbling our way into Enochian magic. So here we go. I'll pick off where we left yesterday, or pick up where we left yesterday. Let's see. This is after David's initial contact, and he started speaking spontaneously in the angelic tongue, which none of us had ever heard or expected. Okay, but we did have a tape recorder running. Okay. Once we had the spirit, we didn't know what to do with it. Well, thanks for showing up. We're sure happy you decided to come, and And David was still in shock because he'd just broken into a wild tongue. And so after the banishing, we immediately turned to the tape recorder to copy down the words that I had said to see if they translated. Okay, and I remember it was the Donald Laycock's Enochian dictionary, which first came out, and our lodge member Donald Rose brought his brand new copy, which he donated that night to the Guild of Enochian Studies. Okay. After the banishing, we immediately turned to the tape recorder to copy down the words that I had said to see if they translated. We had an Enochian dictionary that had been lent to us by a member of the group, but there would be an additional difficulty as we would have to judge phonetically how the words were probably spelled. When we played back the tape, everything came out the little speaker clearly until it reached the point that the vision first manifested. Here the words on the tape suddenly began to be obscured by static. This is absolutely true, which gradually increased in intensity until my recorded voice was almost totally drowned out and beyond decipherment, even by me. At the point where the vision ended, the spirit was dismissed, the tape recorded, and the tape recorder returned to normalcy again. Now remember, we're just young, superstitious, wannabe magicians in our 20s here. Clearly picking up Lon's voice when I banished the room. After writing down as much as we could of what I said during the ceremony, at least half was obscured by static. We went to the dictionary to see if there were bona fide Enochian words to match the sounds on the tape. To my utter amazement, because I hadn't really taken the whole affair too seriously until then, the words began to translate. One by one, the words were translated into coherent English phrases. There were breaks here and there where the words on the tape were drowned out by static or where, for whatever reason, they were untranslatable. What came out before the static got too bad was this, and the punctuation is mine. He says, Spirit of Earth, Nanta. Okay. First worshiper, welcome visit. Stretch forth and conquer earth. And then untranslatable, peace. And as I recall, it said, find peace. There was much more on the tape that couldn't be heard. But what we did receive was startling enough under the circumstances. This, quote, speaking in tongues was a phenomena that I was to repeat, which was to repeat itself a number of times in the following weeks during our evocations. Aside from the, to me, remarkable feat that we got anything coherent from my psychic mumblings at all, there were several elements of the experience which Lon pointed out to me that added to my wonderment. First, he said that the physical elements of my vision were completely appropriate to the elements which Ladrim dominates on the earth tablet, which were primarily earth and spirit. Indeed it was, because all the senior names are drawn off. They radiate from the center of the big white cross there in the middle. So there's 6 seniors that radiate from the center to the right, from the center to the left, from the center up, and the center's down, and a spiral whirl in the center for the 7th senior, the son senior of the tablet. I didn't know it was going to be an Enochian lesson this morning, but I guess it is. Let's see. Second, he said that the planetary power which he represented was Mars. And it's very harmonious with the remark, stretch forth and conquer Earth, made by the Spirit. And of course, there was the weirdness that the tape recorder pulled during the vision, which had not occurred before and hasn't since been repeated. This machine, by the way, was not a cheap piece of equipment. It might have been a bad tape, of course, but it still seems odd that the static came only when the Spirit did and also left when the Spirit did. The phrase in the Spirit's message, first worshiper, supposedly referring to me, would indicate, and this is David talking, remember, would indicate that this entity had never been called on before. And considering how relatively untouched this system has been by practitioners since the time of Dee, this was not too far-fetched an idea, although I can think of no way of proving it one way or the other unless someone steps forward and says they had successfully conjured this being before. 1981, it's pretty likely. Whatever the case, Ladrum has since displayed a very un-Mars-like generosity toward me personally in a number of very concrete ways. Now, naturally, David, in his personal magical endeavors, went home and worked with the system quite a bit his entire career, I guess, right up into his untimely death a few years ago. Another rather unique aspect of all of the Enochian experiences has been the, to quote Lon, thank you very much, the cleanness of the system. That is, there is no inflaming oneself with prayer or sacrificing goats or poodles, no complex preparation, only straightforward and unusually short invocation, and then a spontaneous mental vision, which, in my own experience, has been quite beyond my conscious control. And there has frequently brought information that I had no previous knowledge of. This is very different from my own past experiences with magic. I have been at times, though not consistently, prone to spontaneous trances, especially during evocations, and to intense physical sensations, rather like sea spray on my skin, on 2 occasions. I observed visible manifestation that is visible to the naked physical eye during evocations which I have performed, like lights or mist floating in the room, so that I was particularly surprised when the Enochian work produced rather remarkable results without what were, to me, the usual trappings of psychic experiences. Our second evocation, and we were working with the Earth tablet because that's the one that first got itself completed. When we did the Ladrum call, the first week, I just made a giant 4 foot by 4 foot blow up, if you will, of the tablet of Earth, and I used colored stickers and of course I drew out all the squares and everything, but I used colored stickers to show the permutation of the elements throughout the tablet. And but our first wooden tablet was being cut at that time by another class member. And I think by the second time we actually had the wooden board in the room with us. So our second evocation the following week involved a different entity, both in nature and stature. We selected one of the lesser spirits of the, and David mixed up, he's misquoting himself here. Okay, it was the Earth tablet, the water subangle of the Earth tablet. Okay, but here he says it was the water tablet and the air subangle, which it wasn't. So I will presume to correct him here. We selected one of the spirits of the Earth tablet, water of Earth to be exact, and carefully determined the various superiors that would have to be called to achieve contact. After the preliminaries, I read the appropriate call, and in the name of the proper Carib, Fra. Okay, so there's Fra there. And there's the two divine names in the cross there that rule it. And as you can see, it is from the Earth tablet and the water subangle. First, there was an echoing, like a wind in a concrete culvert. And then I saw a long, immense tunnel, not perfectly round, but slanted at an angle that ringed like a seashell. At the end of this tunnel, blue light spread like watercolor on wet paper, and the center of this was a long, iridescent smear of green. From this, a sphere popped into view, gray and indistinct, like congealed mist. It was all until I called the names again, in response to which the sphere suddenly shot forth spikes of gray from all over its surface, increasing its diameter by a third and making it resemble a mutant sea urchin. From behind this thing came a group of small white balls of light, which proceeded to circle in an orbit around the larger body. I called the spirit again, and one of the lights floated away from the orbit and came very close to me, hanging suspended in the center of my field of vision. Superimposed on the ball of white light, there appeared an androgynous human face, very attractive and benevolent seeming. After determining to our satisfaction that this was the manifestation we were looking for, we asked it several questions as to its nature, to which it responded with a series of complex visual images, which is the way most of these things respond to all questions, through me at least. In other words, they don't talk a lot. They show you visions in response to your questions. They answer in visions. A picture is worth 1,000 words. Verbal response is the exception, not the rule. This time, however, there was to be more Enochian communication. He started to break into. In much the same fashion as before. When translated, the initial part of the message read, "In the midst of the companions of Fra." which was even more specific than the first message. And it was who we were after. Now it's starting to fade out here, so you'll excuse me if I have to squint here and guess. The rest of the material was composed of disjointed references to songs, presumably in reference to the calls. But while we got a clear phrase, there were large gaps in the sense of the whole thing, as though it had been heard over a faulty radio set. After this experience ceased, after this, the experiences ceased to be limited to our regular meetings, but started overlapping in my own life. Now, I think, if I'm not mistaken, we might have a drawing by David of Fra. Yeah. There is his cartoon of the giant sea urchin surrounded by the white balls and the but anyway, it's all very interesting, and this happened so many years ago, and so much has changed, and I've learned so much and experienced so much thing and made so many more mistakes. So many more magical things have blown up in my face. But we miss David very, very, very much. He's one of our all-time favorite people. Like I mentioned yesterday, he would eventually do work. I worked with David for a long time, including his illustrations with my then publisher, New Falcon Publications. He wrote several books, Urban Voodoo, and other books for Falcon Press. He illustrated our illustrated Goetia, Aleister Crowley's illustrated Goetia, and he's just very, very sorely missed. But he was a bright, brilliant magician that's left us far too early. Anyway, I think I'm going to try to continue with his story from this classic mustard-colored Oye magazine from the spring equinox 1981 and the very beginnings of the Guild of Enochian Studies. Until tomorrow and Saturday morning cartoons. Oh, you'll notice I'm in my, let's see, my Macau University windbreaker here. Thank you, son. It's nice and warm and cozy. Anyway, until tomorrow, continue to be good to yourself, be good to each other. Do what thou wilt, shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will.